If you care about Black women, sit your down. And if you care about legislators and judicial officers upholding your basic rights and freedoms, I need you to sit your down, okay? Grab some popcorn. We're gonna be here for a little bit. I'm dedicating this video today to Adriana Smith, 30-year-old nurse who was declared brain dead last year, and her body was taken by the state to continue developing a fetus that was in her body. Both she and her family lost the autonomy to decide what was going to happen to this fetus. I want to notate that former Georgia Senator Nabila Parks wrote to the Republican State Attorney General Christopher Carr later in May, calling Smith's circumstances inhumane and requesting clarity on how the state's abortion law would apply to Smith's case. Later, Democratic State Representative Park Cannon called for the passage of Adriana's law, which would, in Cannon's words, affirm that individuals retain agency over their bodies and medical decisions even under restrictive fetal personhood regimes. This is the topic of today. Black women are 3 times more likely to die in pregnancy-related issues over white women. How does this relate to the conversation today? We're going over what the state attorney general could have done for Adriana Smith's family, and we are also talking about what a Supreme Court judge could have done on behalf of the family to make sure their wishes were upheld in regards to Adriana Smith's body, in regards to the unborn fetus, and as well as the healthcare professionals who were administering care to Adriana and the fetus. Just so we have a better idea of what a state attorney general does and how much pull they have, as well as the Supreme Court judge, I'm gonna run down how they could have protected Adriana and her unborn child. A state attorney general could have issued some type of formal legal guidance. They could have created a formal binding legal opinion stating that the Life Act, which defines an unborn child as a natural person and restricts abortions after cardiac activity is detected. It does not apply when a pregnant patient is already legally dead. And in this case, Adriana Smith was brain dead. They could have also provided some immunity assurances, so Emory University Hospital would not be able to prosecute, investigate, or sanction doctors or hospitals for terminating life support in cases of brain death, reducing the defensive medicine that led to her months-long maintenance on support, and also issuing guidelines on what fetal personhood is. Right? So the Attorney General could have clarified that the legal personhood bestowed on a fetus does not automatically supersede the bodily autonomy and rights of a legally deceased person. The Supreme Court judge could have helped in expediting a judicial review. So they could have helped a lawsuit filed by the family determine if the Life Act required keeping a brain dead patient on life support, providing a definitive ruling to override the hospital's interpretation. They could have also applied existing legal standards. A judge could have ruled that the person in question, Adriana, was legally deceased, making the law inapplicable to her situation, as brain death is defined as a legal death in Georgia. There's so many other ways that the Supreme Court judges and state attorney general could have protected Adriana's wishes as well as her family's, but this is the conversation that keeps coming up over and over and over again, because y'all are so worried about an unborn fetus, but what happens to the fetus after it's brought to full term? The father has now had to go file for full custody because if the child does survive and is able to leave the hospital, they didn't want the child to go to foster care. They want the child to belong to a parent or a family member. Who's paying for all of these costs? They've now had to start some type of GoFundMe or some type of community efforts to help fund all of the costs that are coming up that the family is now going to be responsible for. If y'all care so much about these unborn fetuses, where is the support? Y'all put down y'all's foot when it came to saving this child. What are you all doing to make sure that these families have support after the children are born? Or what are you doing to make sure that we have basic rights and freedoms and the autonomy to decide what we need to happen for our families and for ourselves? I'm so disappointed in how Adriana Smith's situation has happened, but it's up to us showing up in the booth, getting in the booth to decide what happens moving forward, because I would hate that to happen to me and any of you sitting on the other side of this screen. I feel ill-equipped when it comes to having a full conversation about Black maternal mortality, but I do want to have a conversation, and I am invested in it after hearing Adriana's story, and I want to know how I can be of more service. So I need you to lock in really quick because we're about to get into the Supreme Court judges and talk a little bit about who's up for election this year. So what does a state attorney general do? It says that while AGs are and AGs, short for attorney generals, are involved in law enforcement, their role often focuses more on civil litigation rather than local criminal prosecutions, which are typically handled by district attorneys. So cool. But something that they would do, they would act as civil representation, all civil cases, investigate and prosecute criminal activity, particularly regarding environmental law. So now my mind is like, listen. It's really like at alert because everything that we've been talking about with data centers showing up in Black communities, I need to know what the Attorney General stands for to make sure that you're upholding the environmental law and protecting the citizens, all citizens here in the state of Georgia, okay? There are so many things that they attend to, but another one of interest that might be of interest is enforcing consumer protection laws against businesses, addressing fraud and deceptive practices. So I know y'all saw what was going on with, what's that man named Brandon, when he was doing veneers, he was calling himself a veneer tech, and that's not a real thing. Yeah, I don't know if the state attorney general has something to do with that, but that sounds like something that they would try and come in and mitigate. And then also they investigate and prosecute criminal activity, particularly environmental law, Medicaid fraud, and organized crime. Okay, so let's get into the candidates. Up first, so we are replacing Republican Christopher Carr, and I'm going over Tanya Miller and Robert Trammell. So Tanya Miller is currently a House state representative. I love when there are people who are already serving in office and they're on the ballot for another election, because then I get to see how you voted in the past, right? Tanya, as an attorney general, she has an experienced prosecutor's plan for public safety. She wants to target and dismantle violent criminal networks. She wants to support local law enforcement by providing the resources, training, assistance needed to solve crimes and protect our neighborhoods. Work to strengthen our justice system by promoting evidence-based policies that reduce recidivism and make our communities safer in the long run. She wants to take on price gouging and unfair utility hikes, protecting your pocketbook. Love that. She wants to launch investigations into the grocery supply chain. I do not know if y'all have heard about this, but Walmart has been having their way with us, okay? Like, I'm sure there's a few others out there, but the way that they have been monopolizing, I don't know if that's a word, the industry and inflating the cost of food for a lot of us as regular citizens, I'm glad to hear that's on her docket. There are a list of other things on her website, like she wants to demand transparency from large corporations so Georgians can see why prices are rising and hold them accountable for any corporate greed that harms families. Wants to use the full antitrust authority of office to ensure a competitive market that gives consumers more choices and lower prices. And I would love for you to apply that to freaking Georgia Power. I will not be explaining further. Thank you. As Attorney General, Tanya would like to champion small businesses, ensuring a level playing field. What does that look like? Holding corporations accountable for negligence that harms our environment, our workers, our local economies. Just mentioned that when it came to, the data centers popping up. She wants to establish a small business protection unit within the Attorney General's office to serve as a resource and advocate for Georgia entrepreneurs and challenge monopolistic practices. Her next prong is defending our constitutional rights, justice for all, safeguarding our most fundamental right, the right to vote, and challenge any effort that seeks to unlawfully disenfranchise Georgia voters. Y'all, just the way that Georgia acted up in the 2020 election and beyond is just ridiculous to me. You can't give people rides to go to the polls, people getting their voting location changed last minute, just all this stuff to just, have an unfair advantage. It's so crazy. It's like, if y'all are so great, why can't y'all win the right way?
Oh, what a loser!
Okay, just be fair. So love that she's trying to uphold that. Her next prong, she's talking about cracking down on consumer fraud. So keeping your money in your pocket. What does that look like? Aggressively prosecuting robocall operations, identity thieves, and online scammers. Woo! protecting our seniors so by pursuing those who commit elder fraud and financial abuse, and then also enforcing Georgia's price gouging laws during a state of emergency to stop businesses from taking advantage of a crisis. Love that. Oh, some of the things that I definitely wanted to highlight, because I mentioned that she is currently a House representative, I want to talk a little bit about what she has historically, some bills that she's tried to sponsor in the past. So she has sponsored Health Coverage, Affordability and Fairness Act. She has tried to support crimes and offenses, certain legal action protections for healthcare professionals, administering medical treatment to pregnant women. Blinks and Adriana Smith, okay? She also sponsored a bill for social services, expanding Medicaid. There's a ton of bills here that she has sponsored, but just trying to give you an understanding of what our good sister is representing. Oh, also another one of benefit for you all. She also sponsored a bill for the Overtime Income Tax Exemption Act. Essentially, you excluding up to $10,000 of overtime wages per employee from taxation. So I think that's dope for all of us hard workers out there who are putting in that overtime. We shouldn't be taxed on that. Y'all already getting enough money. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, those are some of the bills that Tanya Miller has sponsored as a House representative in her current term. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next candidate for the Attorney General here. We're back. Robert Trammell, he is the next candidate for the State Attorney General, okay? He too was part of the Georgia House of Representatives representing District 132 from the years of 2015 to 2021, championing some of the bills like prohibiting the use of no-knock search warrants and also graduated credit base on taxpayer income for certain child independent care expenses. If you want to see more of what Robert Trammell used to sponsor in terms of bills, please go to billtrack50.com. I'm not seeing a lot of detail that I saw on Tanya Miller's website about how she plans to do this, but I'm gonna go over the prongs that are listed here. So he wants to protect our community. So every family should be able to live in a safe community. That means stopping human trafficking, fighting drugs that devastate families, and dismantling gangs. So protecting our livelihoods. What does that mean? He means for fair treatment, safe workplaces, and preserving natural resources for future generations. He wants to protect our wallets. That means that he wants fraud and financial scams. He recognizes that fraud and financial scams cost Georgians millions every year, especially seniors who are targeted the most. From Ponzi schemes to predatory crypto scams will hold back actors accountable and close the loopholes they exploit. Interested to see how that can be done. He wants to protect our rights. He wants to protect reproductive rights. He wants to civil rights and ensure equal treatment under the law. Free speech and fair elections are a non-negotiable, and political violence has no place in our democracy. Love that. Stand on business on that. And he also wants to protect us online. So technology brings opportunity, but also real risk. He wants to protect us from deep fakes, online scams, and data misuse that threatens trust, privacy, and safety. So those are some of the running points for, he's calling himself on his website Bob Trammell, but if you look him up under Robert Trammell, he'll show up as well. So those are the candidates for both Democratic candidates for the State Attorney General. We're back and we're here to talk about the Supreme Court judges. If you don't know what a Supreme Court judge does, stay right here, okay? So these are the final arbiters, aka the final bosses of federal law. Basically, they're going to decide which cases to hear out of thousands of petitions. They typically only hear 70 to 80, and they vote on the outcomes of the cases argued before the court. They also possess the power to determine the constitutionality of laws passed by Congress or actions taken by the executive branch, and they also do research, deliberate, and write legal opinions explaining their decisions. Remember that Supreme Court judges run as nonpartisan elected officials. We are going to stand on what they have historically voted on versus Democrat versus Republican. So we have two Supreme Court judges up for election this year. So first Supreme Court justice that is up for re-election, or we can vote him out, is Charlie Bethel. Now, normally I try to stay nonpartisan, or not nonpartisan, because I think I generally tend to lean on the progressive side. I'm trying to stay out of who you're going to vote for, but in this particular case, I'm sorry, I'm going to show a little more bias, because Charlie Bethel voted yes in prohibiting abortions after 20 weeks. These are the type of people that when we talk about Adriana Smith, let's go ahead and do what we need to do, okay? So on May 19th, person that I would like you all to take a look at is Miracle Rankin, and let's get on to some of her beliefs, okay? Because that's what we're here for. She, again, when you're running for Supreme Court judge, you are most likely running as nonpartisan because you're trying to do what's best in terms of the Constitution and the state of all people. But obviously, we know that some folks are going to have more conservative views versus progressive views. Now, in the case of candidate Miracle Rankin, Rankin is a trial attorney that represents victims of catastrophic truck wrecks, medical malpractice, wrongful death, and corporate negligence. She has built her career taking on most powerful interests in winning. She has secured 8-figure resolutions for her clients, but more than the number, she measures success by the trust she builds and the dignity she restores to those who feel powerless. Love that. She's also an AKA member for whoever cares about that. And let's get on to some of her beliefs, okay? Because that's what we're here for. Miracle is running on the basis of equal justice for all. She believes that Georgia courts should work for everyone, not just the powerful. Every person who comes before the court deserves fairness, dignity, and equal justice under the law. As for crime, she believes in public safety, accountability, and equal justice under the law. Georgia deserves a Supreme Court that protects communities, respects victims, and applies law fairly to everyone. She wants, in terms of healthcare, she believes that Georgians should have access to essential healthcare that is provided safely with dignity and accountability. And in regards to abortion, she wants privacy, dignity, and freedom, okay? She believes that the pregnancy, privacy, and bodily autonomy involve some of the most personal decisions a person can face. So questions like these must be approached with care, independence, and deep respect for the Constitution. That is for Charlie Bethel's seat. Next seat for the Supreme Court judge is Judge Sarah Warren. We need to get her out of here, okay? She is known for her conservative, pro-business, and strict constructionist approach to the law. Warren was among the majority that reinstated Georgia's restrictive 6-week abortion law in 2024. She also has conservative support. She's been endorsed by groups like Frontline, Policy Action, and an evangelical organization opposing abortion access, along with former Governor Nathan Deal, who originally appointed her. Her approach says nonpartisan, but how can you say that when you have so many conservative views? When May 19th comes, I need you all to take a look at Jen Jordan. Jen Jordan was a state senator for here in Georgia for District 6 from the years of 2017 to 2023. Her successor is also Jason Estevez, which I need to talk about a little bit more because I didn't get the chance to talk about him in the gubernatorial candidate race. Y'all, I'm gonna have to comment with more information about Jen Jordan, but I will say that information that we do have is that she fought against Georgia's strict abortion ban as an attorney, and she notably sued the Georgia Environmental Protection Division over cancer-causing emissions. She is also endorsed by Fair Fight Action and Reproductive Freedom for All. She did lose her 2022 race for Georgia Attorney General against the incumbent Chris Carr. We're gonna get him up out of here as well. But please, when you get to the voting booth, she is someone to be looking at. Jen Jordan and Miracle Rankin. Okay, so thank you so much for watching thus far. This one was a little bit more serious, but I need y'all to know that I'm standing on business.
Big business.
Like, I'm not playing with y'all this election. Like, I'm getting in the booth and I'm taking my civic duty seriously. I don't have time. I don't have time for any more excuses. I don't want to hear any more of my Black women sisters that could have been saved before they were dead, and I had something to do with it. That's how responsible I feel at this point. Like, if I could have stopped somebody from getting in office that was not gonna protect my basic rights and freedoms, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that, and I think you should too. Okay, so let's lock in and get in the booth. I'll see y'all soon.